picture this, if you will. You are standing high up in the Andes Mountains.
Oh yeah, high up.
Right, like we are not talking about a nice scenic lookout at the end of a casual weekend hike. We are talking proper breath-stealing altitude.
Absolutely.
You take a full breath, but your lungs just feel empty because the air is incredibly thin and the sun is uncomfortably sharp, just beating down through a thin atmosphere.
It's harsh.
Exactly. The ground beneath your feet is steep, stony, and frankly, it's not especially interested in making life easy for anyone.
No, it really isn't.
Now look around. There are no horses anywhere. There are no oxen pulling heavy wooden plows.
Right.
There are no cattle herds spreading across lush lowland pastures. No sheep. Yet somehow, in this seemingly unforgiving vertical landscape, human beings built sprawling, sophisticated cities.
It's honestly incredible.
It is. They engineered massive road networks, incredibly complex textile economies, deep ritual systems, and sprawling empires that spanned thousands of miles. And walking right beside them, carrying the literal and metaphorical weight of that civilization, are these animals with long necks, soft padded feet, big watchful eyes, and this kind of awkward but undeniable dignity.
They really do have a presence.
They look at you almost like they know something you don't.
Well, it is an incredible image to conjure, simply because it breaks every preconceived notion we have about how a massive civilization is supposed to get off the ground.
Right.
Like, when you look at the foundations of ancient empires globally, historians and archaeologists almost always default to the Eurasian starter pack of livestock.
A starter pack, yeah.
You know, you expect cavalry for warfare, you expect massive draft animals to pull plows and break the earth.
Totally.
You look for beasts of burden with hard hooves and immense physical pulling power, basically relying on brute force to conquer the landscape.
Yeah, that is the traditional blueprint. You conquer a flat plain, you hook an ox to a plow, and boom, you build a city. But so I have been looking through an incredibly rich stack of research, historical notes, and biological data on South American camelids.
The llamas and alpacas.
Yes, the llamas and alpacas. And the story hidden in these sources shows a completely different blueprint for human survival.
It really does.
This wasn't about dominating a landscape with brute animal force. This is a story about what it means to build a world with a mountain, rather than constantly trying to fight against it.
I love that framing.
Thanks. So the mission of our deep dive today is to really understand this profound partnership between humans and these high-altitude specialists. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
To figure out how Andean societies achieved this, how they built a thriving mountain world without that traditional livestock starter pack, we have to look under the hood.
We do.
We have to start with the unique biological machinery of the animals themselves.
And if you look at the evolutionary origins of that biological machinery, the first major surprise is geographic.
Wait, really? Geographic how?
Well, camelids did not actually originate in South America.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, they started in North America tens of millions of years ago.
I had no idea.
Long before the Andes were even populated by humans, the ancestors of today's llamas were roaming the plains of North America.
That's wild.
Over vast stretches of evolutionary time, that family tree basically branched out in two very different directions.
Sure.
One branch wandered off across the Bering Land Bridge into Asia and eventually Africa.
Ah, I see where this is going.
Right, so those animals adapted to extreme heat, scarce water, and dry sand to become the old world camels we know today.
The ones with the humps.
Exactly, the drometers with one hump and the Bactrian camels with two.
The ultimate desert survivors. You can think of the old world camel as this massive desert cargo ship built to cross endless seas of sand.
That's a great analogy.
But the branch that went south is what we are really focusing on today.
Precisely. That second branch moved south, crossing the Isthmus of Panama down into South America, and those became the New World camelids. Fast forward to today, and there are 4 specific types of South American camelids.
4. Okay, I know llama and alpaca.
Right, those are the 2 that have been domesticated. But there are also 2 that remain completely wild.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, the guanaco and the vicuña. And it's a common misconception to view them as just slightly different versions of the same animal.
I mean, I kind of always did.
A lot of people do,
Yeah.
but they are physically distinct, genetically distinct, and they serve completely different purposes within an ecosystem and a human economy.
Let's actually break down those physical differences, because I think a lot of people just see a fluffy neck and a funny face, and use alpaca or llama interchangeably.
Oh, absolutely.
The size difference alone is massive. Like, looking at the medical and veterinary data from our sources, llamas sit at roughly 120 to 200 kilograms.
They are big.
Yeah, we're talking about a big, robust, physically intimidating animal. They are the heavy lifters.
Historically, they are absolutely central as pack animals.
Right. And then alpacas are much, much smaller, sitting around 60 to 80 kilograms.
Quite a difference.
Yeah, and they are highly prized not for their hauling power. I mean, you aren't putting a heavy pack on an alpaca, but for their fiber.
Exactly.
And even that fiber comes in two main types, right? The dense, crimped huacaya fleece, which looks like a giant teddy bear,
Yes.
and the longer, silkier surrey locks, which look almost like dreadlocks.
So physically, the llama is built for strength and endurance, while the alpaca is essentially built to grow thermal technology.
Thermal technology, I like that.
But what truly makes both of them the perfect engines for an Andean civilization are their high-altitude adaptations.
Let's get into that.
Think about the physical ground they're walking on. Unlike horses, cattle, or sheep, which have hard, solid hooves made of keratin,
Right?
camelids have padded, two-toed feet. They're walking on these leathery pads with toenails at the end of their toes, rather than a hoof enclosing the foot.
I actually found myself pausing on that detail in the research because on the surface, a padded foot versus a hoof just sounds like a fun trivia fact.
It does.
But then you consider the terrain. If you have thousands of animals walking on fragile, thin mountain topsoil, hard hooves act like tiny chisels.
Oh, absolutely.
A herd of cattle or sheep will tear up the delicate root systems of high-altitude grasses, causing a massive soil erosion.
Yeah, it's devastating.
So these padded camelid feet are essentially built-in shock absorbers. They distribute the animal's weight in a way that protects the very ground they rely on to survive.
It's a brilliant evolutionary design for fragile ecosystems. And their internal biology is just as specialized as their feet.
The stomach stuff, right?
Yeah, camelids are foregut fermenters. They have a complex three-compartment stomach, with the first compartment acting as this massive fermentation vat.
Wow.
In the high Andes, lush green pasture is incredibly rare. You are dealing with sparse, coarse, tough grasses that have very low nutritional value for a typical monogastric animal.
Or even some ruminants, right?
Exactly. Their specific digestive system relied on specialized microbes to break down cellulose. They regurgitate their food, chew the cud, and swallow it again, allowing them to extract maximum nutrition from unbelievably poor forage.
So they literally act as biological processing plants, turning tough, dry mountain vegetation that humans cannot eat into energy, fine fiber, and meat.
That's spot on.
That makes the llama the perfect mountain Sherpa. They aren't a second-rate substitute for a horse.
Not at all.
They are a highly specialized technology calibrated specifically for vertical, rocky, barren terrain.
Yes, perfectly suited.
But let's push past the feet and the stomach for a second. We mentioned the altitude earlier. If I walk up a set of stairs at 14,000 feet, I am gasping for breath.
Same here.
So how did these large animals even breathe efficiently enough to carry heavy loads up a mountain?
The biology of their respiration is where the evolutionary adaptation gets truly staggering.
Okay, lay it on me.
Studies on high-altitude camelids, specifically focusing on alpacas, show they have very distinctive oxygen transport traits.
Oxygen transport.
Right. Their hemoglobin, the protein in red blood cells responsible for carrying oxygen, has a unique dissociation pattern.
Wait, slow down. What exactly is a dissociation pattern? Are you saying their blood is fundamentally different from human blood?
Fundamentally different in how it behaves under pressure, yes.
Okay.
Think of hemoglobin like a fleet of delivery trucks moving oxygen from the lungs to the muscles.
Got it.
In humans or cattle, those trucks are designed to operate in oxygen-rich environments. When we go to high altitudes where oxygen is scarce, our trucks struggle to pick up a full load in the lungs.
That makes sense.
Camelid hemoglobin, however, has a much higher chemical affinity for oxygen. In simple terms, their blood is chemically optimized to grab on to whatever scarce oxygen is available in the lungs.
So it binds to it very tightly.
Yes, but the true genius is the dissociation part.
The dropping off part.
Exactly. Having blood that holds onto oxygen tightly is completely useless if it refuses to let it go when it reaches the muscles. Camelid hemoglobin is uniquely calibrated to release that oxygen efficiently into their tissues exactly where it is needed,
Even at high altitude.
even when the pressure gradients in their bodies are working against them. They are functioning perfectly, running and carrying loads in low-oxygen environments that would leave a horse or a cow experiencing severe hypoxia.
That is insane. So if these animals were already so perfectly evolved for the extreme high Andes, how did early human beings even begin to bridge the gap between hunting them as wild prey and living alongside them as partners?
That's a great question.
I mean, we are talking about a domestication process that began roughly 6,000 to 7,000 years ago.
Yeah, and we really need to reframe our entire understanding of domestication when looking at the Andes.
How so?
Well, usually the story of domestication is told through a lens of human conquest.
Like taming the wild beast.
Exactly. The narrative is that humans encounter a wild beast, capture it, break its spirit, aggressively breed it for desirable traits, and fundamentally control its destiny. But in the Andes, with the llama and the alpaca, domestication was much more like a slow, generational conversation between species.
I actually struggled with that traditional conquest narrative while reading the sources.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I kept thinking, did humans really tame these animals? Or did human beings just learn to mimic the mountain environment so perfectly that the animals simply agreed to stick around?
That's a really profound way to look at it.
Because looking at the data, this wasn't a sudden revolutionary event. It was thousands of tiny daily decisions over millennia.
Millennia, yes.
Humans had to observe and figure out which specific animals tolerated closeness, which ones didn't panic under the pressure of being corralled,
Right.
which females naturally produced slightly softer fiber, and which males could calmly tolerate a load being placed on their back.
And the genetics of these animals completely back up that idea of a slow, messy conversation.
Really?
Yeah. For a long time, the simple, clean assumption in biology was that the wild guanaco was the direct ancestor of the domesticated llama, and that the delicate wild vicuña was the direct ancestor of the domesticated alpaca, like a straight line from A to B.
That's what I would have assumed.
But modern genomic studies reveal a profoundly tangled ancestry. There is massive introgression throughout their history.
Introgression, meaning they were constantly interbreeding with each other.
Yes, exactly. Introgression is the transfer of genetic information from one species to another as a result of hybridization and repeated backcrossing.
So they were just mixing it up constantly.
Over thousands of years, humans weren't just isolating one pure genetic line. Herds of early llamas might have intermingled with wild guanacos or alpacas with vicuñas.
Wow.
What you end up with today is a general size and utility gradient rather than stark, isolated species.
That makes a lot of sense.
You start with the very small, incredibly delicate vicuña, which produces some of the finest fiber in the world but cannot be domesticated.
Okay.
Then you move up to the domesticated fiber specialist, the alpaca. Then you have the wild, tough, highly adaptable guanaco. And finally, the large, load-bearing domesticated llama.
It's like a spectrum. And beyond the genetics, the reproductive realities of camelids force a very specific kind of human relationship.
Oh, absolutely.
Like if you are a modern agriculturalist trying to build a fast-paced industrial farming empire, the camelid is going to completely frustrate you.
They will ruin your business plan.
Yeah. They have a remarkably slow gestation period. We are looking at around 11 months, usually falling between 332 and 352 days, to produce just a single offspring.
Which is called a criamia.
Right, a criaca. Twinning is incredibly rare and usually dangerous. And on top of all that, they are induced ovulators.
And that biological quirk-induced ovulation tells us so much about the culture that had to grow around them.
How so?
Well, in humans, or traditional livestock like cattle, females have a regular estrus cycle. Eggs are released on a hormonal schedule, regardless of mating.
Right.
In camelids, the physical act of copulation is what triggers the release of the egg.
Which means you can't just throw a bunch of animals in a pen, walk away, and expect an explosive population boom. You cannot rush a llama or an alpaca. You can't force them into a rapid output industrial model like you might with pigs or poultry.
No, you really can't.
Because they reproduce so slowly and grow so slowly, Andean pastoralism required deep intergenerational patience. It demanded profound seasonal knowledge.
It did. Human communities had to learn the intimate herd behaviors of these animals.
And the camelids slowly adapted to human-managed landscapes too, right?
Yes, moving through corrals and participating in patterned seasonal movements between high and low pastures.
So it wasn't human domination, it was a mutual adaptation for survival.
And this slow, careful cultivation of llamas and alpacas provided the exact biological tools humans needed to conquer the unique geographical challenges of the Andes.
Because, as the historical sources make clear, building a civilization in the Andes meant throwing out the rulebook of flat, sprawling agricultural societies.
Right.
You had to build a vertical civilization.
A vertical civilization, exactly.
Let's expand on that verticality. The way I found myself picturing this Andean system is like a massive high-rise apartment building.
Oh, I like that.
In a traditional Eurasian civilization, your farm spreads out for miles in every direction on flat ground. But in the Andes, your ecosystem is stacked.
Right on top of each other.
Every floor of this high-rise building produces something totally different. Down on the bottom floors, the lower elevations near the coast, you are getting fish, maybe growing cotton.
Okay.
Go up a few floors where it's a bit cooler but still manageable, and you have your mid-valley maize production.
Yep.
Then you go up higher into the colder zones, and you are growing potatoes and quinoa.
And man.
Finally, you take the stairs all the way up to the penthouse, the high freezing Puna grasslands, and that is where your camelid herds are living, eating the tough ichu grass.
The challenge of that high-rise system, though, is distribution.
Exactly.
You have carbohydrates on floor 2, protein and fiber in the penthouse, and coastal resources on the ground floor. A civilization cannot survive if the people on floor 2 freeze to death because they don't have wool, while the people in the penthouse starve because they don't have carbohydrates.
It has to be connected.
Right. To make that building function as a single, cohesive economy, you need a reliable elevator system.
And the llama caravans were the elevators.
They were the sole mechanism for heavy logistical movement.
Wow.
The Inca Empire and the major societies like the Wari and Tiwanaku that predated them managed these stacked ecological worlds through sheer logistical mastery.
Like the road system.
Exactly. Take the massive Inca road system, the Capacyan, particularly the branches moving through the Calasuyu region. Those roads were marvels of engineering, but they were not highways designed for wheeled carts.
Because a wheeled cart is entirely useless on a staircase carved into the side of a mountain cliff.
Precisely. The road was a living thread of padded camelid feet moving massive volumes of goods across ecological layers.
That's a beautiful image.
Logistics, far more than military cavalry, is what allowed the Inca state to project power, maintain stability, and survive extreme environmental shocks, like multi-year droughts or unexpected frosts.
Because if the maize crop completely failed on the lower level, a local community would normally starve.
Right.
But with the llama caravans, the state could move dried potatoes and camelid meat down from the higher levels to buffer that famine.
Exactly.
A llama cannot carry an adult human rider into battle like a cavalry horse, and it certainly cannot pull a heavy wooden cart like an ox.
No.
But those padded two-toed feet could navigate steep, twisting, thin-air mountain trails that would instantly snap a horse's leg.
They were perfect for it.
They moved sea salt, coca leaves, textiles, dried meat, and precious minerals across impossible distances.
Yeah, the scale was massive.
But transporting goods is really only one half of the survival equation here, because surviving the freezing high-altitude nights required another absolutely crucial contribution from these animals. We have to dive into the fiber of society and what the sources refer to as the whole animal economy.
Right. The role of fiber in the ancient Andes functioned as far more than just clothing.
I mean, obviously it keeps you warm.
Of course, alpaca and vicuña fleece is a marvel of thermal technology. The fibers have a hollow core, which traps air and makes them incredibly warm, lightweight, and durable.
Literal survival gear in that environment.
You die without it. What's fascinating here is that textiles evolved beyond mere survival. They became a complex social language.
That is something that is hard for a modern mind to grasp. Today, a sweater is just a sweater. You buy it because you like the color or the fit.
But in ancient Andean societies, particularly those without a written alphabet or coined money in the Eurasian sense, textiles communicated everything about a person's life and status.
Really? Like what?
They communicated your social rank within the hierarchy. They signaled your specific regional identity based on the dyes and weaving patterns. They documented your labor obligations to the state. A finely woven alpaca or vicuña garment, known as kumbi, was almost like a legal document.
A legal document.
Yeah, a legal document, a resume, and a bank vault, all rolled into one. It stored actual wealth.
That's incredible.
It marked your place in the cosmos and the empire. The state would gift fine textiles to local lords to secure alliances, essentially using woven alpaca hair as a tool of high-stakes diplomacy.
And the utility of the animal didn't stop at the fleece. The sources emphasize repeatedly that in this society there was absolutely zero waste.
None at all.
This was a true, whole animal economy. They provided meat, specifically a product called charqui, which is freeze-dried, salted camelid meat.
Oh, and a fun fact from the linguistic notes. The English word jerky actually derives directly from that Quechua word, charqui.
I saw that. That blew my mind.
Right.
And they used the animals' hides to make durable leather and stretched them over frames or drums. They carved the bones into weaving tools, needles, and musical instruments like flutes.
Very resourceful.
But of all the byproducts, the thing that completely recalibrated my understanding of this civilization is the manure. Let's talk about the dung.
The ecological loop of llama dung is easily one of the most underappreciated foundations of Andean civilization.
It sounds so mundane.
It sounds mundane, but chemically and practically, it was the engine of their daily lives.
I mean, it sounds mundane until you imagine living above the tree line. You are at 13,000 feet. The wind is howling. It is freezing.
Right.
There is barely any wood to burn for a fire because trees cannot grow at that altitude. So how do you cook the potatoes you just harvested? How do you stay warm at night?
You use dried llama dung.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because camelids deposit their dung in communal piles, a behavioral quirk of the species. It is incredibly easy to collect.
Yes.
It dries quickly in the thin mountain air, and it burns hot. It literally powered their hearths. And beyond basic fuel, it was an incredibly potent agricultural fertilizer.
Researchers analyzing ancient agricultural terraces have found that llama dung was the essential ingredient for intensifying agriculture lower down the mountain.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, if you want to grow demanding crops like maize on steep, rocky soil,
Yeah.
you need massive nitrogen inputs.
Makes sense.
The llama caravans would bring goods down from the puna, and they would leave behind nutrient-dense dung, which was then worked into the soil.
Consider the elegance of that system. You have a grazing animal that walks out into the harsh, freezing puna.
Right.
It eats sparse, tough, silica-rich grass that human stomachs cannot even begin to digest.
Yeah.
And through the magic of foregut fermentation, it converts that useless grass into high-quality protein in the form of meat.
Yes.
Luxury fiber for thermal protection, load-bearing transport for the economy, and highly combustible, nutrient-rich dung to power the hearths and fertilize the crops.
It's amazing.
It is a perfectly closed, walking ecological loop.
When you lay it out like that, it becomes entirely logical that these animals became the center of Andean spirituality and culture.
Absolutely.
A society rarely ritualizes something it finds irrelevant to its daily existence. Deep ritual and religious reverence always gather around the things a society depends on most for its survival.
The sources detail how heavily integrated camelids were into every facet of spiritual life: feasting, sacrifice, and community ceremony.
Oh, very much so.
There is a specific practice mentioned in the texts called alpaca chuya.
Yes, the fiber blessing.
Right. It is a fiber blessing ceremony deeply tied to the birth season of the creyas and the broader textile culture.
It's a beautiful practice.
And before a massive llama caravan would set off on a dangerous journey across the Inca road network, the herders wouldn't just pack the bags and leave.
No, not at all.
They would literally decorate and bless the lead llamas with colorful tassels and offerings.
That act of decoration and blessing serves a very specific psychological and social function.
How so?
Well, it is a structured, institutional way of remembering your own dependence.
Okay.
When you take the time to bless the lead llama, you're publicly acknowledging several hard truths about your existence.
Like what?
First, you are acknowledging that the mountain environment is inherently dangerous. Weather, altitude sickness, and predators like pumas are real, ever-present threats.
Definitely.
Second, human survival is never guaranteed. It is fragile. And third, your survival on this specific journey is entirely reliant on the cooperation of this animal.
That makes total sense.
Ritual bridges that very uncomfortable, deeply human gap between loving and respecting a living creature and needing to exploit its body and its labor to survive.
It is a profound level of respect. It actually makes me think of how modern societies will christen a massive steel ship with a bottle of champagne before it sets sail.
Oh, that's a brilliant comparison.
You are admitting that you are sending something incredibly valuable out into an uncontrollable, powerful environment, and that admission is mixed with a deep sense of gratitude and hope.
Exactly.
For Quechua and Aymara communities living today, these animals aren't just livestock on a balance sheet. They're considered biocultural heritage.
Yes, the nature of the animal and the culture of the people are completely inseparable. You cannot understand one without the other.
And that profound ancestral respect contrasts so sharply and sometimes painfully with how modern global markets interact with these animals and their fiber today.
It really does. The transition from an indigenous biocultural system to a globalized commodity market forces us to look critically at the modern economy of llamas and alpacas.
Let's look at the actual numbers today because they tell a very specific story.
Okay.
According to the Food and Agriculture Organization data in our research stack, 85% of domesticated South American camelids today are raised by small-scale producers.
85%.
Yeah, typically managing herds of under 100 animals. And crucially, women play a foundational role in the daily care of the herds and the intensive processing of the fiber.
That's a huge point.
Geographically, Peru holds nearly 80% of the world's alpaca population, while Bolivia holds over 60% of the world's llamas. So the animals and the people caring for them are still high in the Andes. But the fleece they produce is traveling the globe. Alpaca fiber has become a massive, highly sought-after global luxury market.
The economics of that global luxury market, however, are incredibly uneven.
Uneven how?
There is a deep systemic tension operating at the heart of this industry, a tension between indigenous livelihood and Western luxury consumption.
Okay, break that down.
Now we're just reporting what the sources say here, not taking a stance. But the tension between luxury consumption and indigenous livelihood is stark.
Of course.
Picture the two ends of the supply chain. On one end, you have a wealthy urban consumer in New York or London buying a premium, sustainable luxury alpaca sweater for hundreds of dollars.
Right.
On the other end, you have a high-altitude herder in the Peruvian Puna dealing with freezing temperatures and sick animals.
Yeah.
The stark reality is that the premium paid by the consumer rarely flows back up the mountain to the producer.
Where is that money going then? Who is capturing the profit?
Global brands and aggressive middlemen capture the margin.
Ah.
The brands capture the romantic story of the Andes. They market the ancient Inca heritage, the majestic mountains, the pure natural fiber.
Right, they sell the vibe.
They use that aesthetic to justify luxury pricing. Meanwhile, the actual producers remain highly vulnerable.
Vulnerable to what?
They are at the mercy of global price swings for raw fiber. They are facing the immediate impacts of climate change on their pastures.
Right.
And they often have no choice but to sell to middlemen at rock-bottom prices because they lack direct access to international markets.
So what does this all mean? It forces a really uncomfortable question about consumer ethics.
It really does.
Is buying an expensive alpaca sweater at a high-end boutique actually supporting Andean cultural continuity?
Okay.
Or does the vast distance of the supply chain and the corporate consolidation in the middle just turn indigenous heritage into a clever marketing aesthetic to sell yarn?
It requires consumers to ask themselves who actually pays the real cost of cheap or even luxury animal products.
Right.
The modern consumer market operates on four demands that constantly contradict each other.
Okay, what are they?
Consumers want cheap prices, they want incredibly high animal welfare standards, they want sustainable land use that protects the environment, and they want fair living wages for the farmer.
That sounds mathematically impossible.
Mathematically and practically, you cannot have all four. When a brand pushes prices down to please consumers or maximize their own margins, someone else pays that invisible cost.
Break down how those costs are paid on the ground.
Well, the cost might be paid by the animal. If a farmer is being paid pennies per pound of fleece, they cannot afford to take their time during shearing. They have to rush, which leads to stressful, sometimes rush shearing practices.
That's awful.
Or the cost is paid by the land. To make a living on low prices, a farmer might drastically increase their herd size, leading to severe overgrazing and soil erosion.
Right.
Or, very often, the cost is simply paid by the herder, who absorbs the financial loss and continues to live in grinding poverty despite producing a luxury good.
And this economic vulnerability is heavily compounded by the grueling physical realities of caring for these animals.
It's hard work.
This is a reality that is completely hidden from the end consumer who is just standing in a store feeling how soft the yarn is.
Oh, entirely hidden.
The sources go into detail about the physicality of care and what researchers are calling the tech paradox.
Yes, the tech paradox. The daily care of a camelid herd is exhausting, relentless work.
Not just standing on a mountain peak looking majestic.
Exactly. The marketing images show a pristine animal standing beautifully on the mountain peak. The reality of care is hauling heavy buckets of water.
Yeah.
It is managing frozen water hoses in the dead of winter. It is meticulously monitoring the body condition of every animal in the herd.
Because they can't get too fat or too thin.
Right. You have to ensure they aren't starving during dry seasons, but you also have to actively prevent obesity because an overweight camelid can suffer severe, life-threatening metabolic issues.
The veterinary notes highlight tasks that sound physically dangerous too. Like, you have to safely wrestle a 150-kilogram llama to the ground just to trim its overgrown toenails.
That is not a fun afternoon.
No. And you have to monitor the birth of cryas out in the elements. A herder has to check if the newborn is nursing properly, if it is passing meconium,
Yeah,
and they have to intervene quickly before the freezing night temperatures set in and kill the baby.
that's high stakes.
And then there is the shearing process itself, which must be done annually to prevent the animal from dying of hyperthermia in the summer months.
Right.
But the shearing process is highly stressful for a prey animal if it is not done calmly and skillfully.
That prey instinct is a crucial factor
Oh, definitely.
because they evolved as prey animals. Llamas and alpacas hide illness incredibly well. Showing weakness in the wild invites a puma attack.
That makes sense.
Consequently, a llama or an alpaca that looks just a little bit quiet or maybe is just standing slightly apart from the herd and isn't eating with enthusiasm might actually be in the late stages of a fatal illness.
That is terrifying for a farmer.
The keeper has to be highly observant, possessing a deep intuitive knowledge of baseline herd behavior just to spot when something is wrong.
Wow.
But into this ancient rhythm of intuitive observation, we are now injecting modern technology.
Here is the paradox part.
Right. We are seeing the rise of advanced veterinary medicine, artificial insemination, embryo transfer, RFID ear tags, and even drones being used to monitor herds.
And that technology creates a profound paradox for pastoralism.
It really does.
On one side of the coin, veterinary care is a clear ethical triumph. Access to vaccines, ultrasound technology to monitor pregnancies, parasite control, and pain relief greatly reduces animal suffering.
That's life-saving.
A sick cryaria that absolutely would have died 200 years ago can now be saved with a simple antibiotic injection.
Exactly.
But technology also shifts the burden of human responsibility. If a society now has the modern tools to prevent suffering, herders and owners no longer have the psychological or moral excuse of saying, well, nature is just harsh, animals die.
That's so true. And the other side of that paradox is the risk of alienation.
What do you mean?
What happens when you apply precision livestock farming to these herds?
Okay.
If you manage a massive herd using drone surveillance, and you know a specific alpaca entirely by the data from its RFID tag.
Right, like looking at a spreadsheet.
Yeah, you know its exact weight, its vaccination history, and the precise micron score of its fleece on a spreadsheet. But you no longer know its face.
Wow.
You no longer recognize its specific friendships within the herd hierarchy or its individual quirks.
Yeah.
Does turning a living, breathing partner into a mere data point break the ancient domestication contract?
It certainly risks fundamentally severing the human-animal bond. Even an intervention as basic as a wire fence changes their entire world.
Oh, absolutely.
A fence protects animals from predators, which improves welfare. But a fence also disrupts the ancient practice of transhumance.
The seasonal movement.
Right, the seasonal movement of herds across vast landscapes. When you fence a herd in, they can no longer follow the water or seek out seasonal grasses.
They are trapped.
They are geographically trapped. And the way we manage that movement, whether they are free to roam or trapped in a paddock, directly dictates their impact on the environment itself.
Which is a vital distinction when evaluating their environmental footprint.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
There is a very popular narrative today that llamas and alpacas are the ultimate eco-friendly livestock. Are they partners to the earth, or are they polluters?
Good question.
Biologically, they have an incredibly impressive baseline. As we discussed earlier, their unique digestive system means they produce significantly less methane per kilogram of body mass compared to domestic ruminants like cattle or sheep on similar roughage diets.
And we covered their padded feet, which significantly reduce soil compaction.
Yes.
Plus, they are highly efficient at converting calories on marginal, non-arable land. You aren't cutting down the Amazon rainforest to grow soy to feed an alpaca.
Right.
They eat grass on mountain slopes that couldn't support crops anyway. They sound like the ultimate green eco-animal.
But the data explicitly dispels the myth that any animal is inherently perfectly eco-friendly regardless of context.
Context is everything.
Yes, their biology makes them potentially regenerative.
Yeah.
If managed correctly, they gently spread nutrient-dense manure across the puna, without destroying the root systems.
Okay.
But an animal's actual environmental footprint is dictated almost entirely by human management decisions.
Makes sense.
If a herd is heavily overstocked, if they are prevented from moving by restrictive fencing, or if they are pushed too hard for quick fiber yields, they can cause severe overgrazing, trampling, and devastating soil erosion.
It highlights the blatant hypocrisy of greenwashing in the global fashion industry.
Oh, for sure.
You can slap an eco-friendly, natural, sustainable fiber label on an alpaca sweater all day long.
But it doesn't mean anything if...
Right. That label means absolutely nothing if the specific farm that supplied the fleece crammed too many animals into a fenced paddock, destroying the local topsoil to meet corporate demand.
Overgrazing is almost never the animal's fault. A llama doesn't choose to destroy its own habitat.
No.
Overgrazing is the result of broken human systems. It's the loss of traditional land access, restrictive fencing that prevents transhumance,
Yeah.
or climate stress that concentrates desperate herds near shrinking water sources.
Or global market pressures.
Exactly. Pressures that force a vulnerable farmer to keep 50 alpacas on a piece of land that biologically can only support 20.
Ultimately, whether we are analyzing their environmental impact, the economic fairness of the global luxury supply chain, or the grueling daily reality of animal welfare, every single thread leads back to the core philosophy of our relationship with these animals.
It really does.
The story of the llama and the alpaca is so much bigger than quirky farm animals with fluffy necks that hum and occasionally spit.
So much bigger.
It is a profound, thousands of years old lesson in how a society can build a civilization with a harsh landscape rather than trying to conquer it through brute force.
Yeah.
It is about shifting our mindset from the ownership of nature to active, respectful stewardship within it.
It is a legacy of endurance, mutual adaptation, and sheer biological brilliance.
It truly is. So, to you, the listener, the next time you put on a surprisingly warm, soft alpaca sweater, or the next time you scroll past a meme of a llama giving someone a deeply judgmental look,
They do have that look.
you really do, I want you to remember the deeper context. Remember the thousands of years of patient, intergenerational human-animal partnership.
Right.
Remember the sound of leathery, padded feet walking on precisely carved Inca stone. And remember the Quechua and Aymara communities who are still high up in the thin air of the Andes, fighting to keep this living knowledge alive in a modern world.
A civilization carried on padded feet.
Exactly. Or wait, I should say undeniably. And before we close out this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final, truly mind-bending fact from the research stack that we haven't even had a chance to touch on yet.
Oh, this is a good one.
Llamas and alpacas produce a highly unique type of heavy-chain antibody in their immune systems. Right now, modern medical scientists are actively deriving what they call nanobodies from camelid blood to use in cutting-edge biomedical research and human therapeutics, including treatments for viruses and immune diseases.
It's cutting-edge stuff.
So could the very same animal that carried an ancient, sprawling mountain civilization on its back hold the microscopic keys to the future of advanced human medicine? Something to mull over. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of camelids. Stay curious.